when I'm reviewing pitch decks and I need to go present to a capital partner or an investment committee, in my mind, and I'm just letting everybody know, I think of three questions. I think, why now? What's different? And why you?
Yep.
And I find that you don't have to put those in those distinct slides. Like, I'm not a big fan of the why now slide. I think it just becomes a little conflated, but that needs to be in your entire pitch deck. It needs to be baked through. If you do your pitch deck right, you're answering those three questions. So what's your advice? So let's start off with why now? How do you bake that into your pitch deck?
In my mind, I get anxious about a time-based problem, right? So in other words, if I were to say COVID is the number one issue, this is 2020, right? I'm like, oh, what if it's not, right? So again, anything that feels momentary, I get a bit anxious about. I'll give you a great one right now. And a lot of people might like kind of do first blush and say, really? AI. AI is going to change all of these things. Okay, cool. What about once it's normalized, then everybody has it within 3 years, right? Then change much then, has it, right? You've got, let's say, 75 use cases, and I'm bullish on AI, I know you are too. You've got 75 use cases where it is transformative. What if you're the 76th use case where it wasn't that transformative, right? So I get anxious around things where it could just be a moment in time, hence the why now. What I look for are, what about this is perennial? People will always have a problem starting a startup. Uber, people will always need to get transportation somewhere.
That's
right?
Good.
Like I like things that don't have a moment in time. I do understand current spark. I do understand, hey, look, the total addressable market starting to explode. Absolutely. And to your point, we have plenty of slides to convey that. But I want to look for stuff where I'm like, damn, that's always going to be a problem. Customer acquisition, always going to be a problem. Things like that.
Okay, you've got these problems. The problem with perennial problems is everybody's trying to solve for them, right?
Yep.
It's pretty competitive. So the next step is, what makes this solution different? How do founders approach that?
It's looking for a beachhead that a lot of people wouldn't think to look for. I'll go back to Uber because I just mentioned it. Theirs was genius, okay? What you think of Uber as now, what the average person thinks of Uber as now, where it's somewhere between taxis and food delivery and all these different things, right? Was not at all what Uber set out to do. Even if Travis and Garrett had like a bigger idea in the future that it could be all these other things, if you recall back in the day, Uber was black cars. They were basically saying, hey, look, there's a bunch of dudes with these limos, airport limos going back and forth, but they're only doing airport rides. Why can't they just take you anywhere else? And Uber's early tagline was everybody's private driver. Because back in the day, they were literally talking about limos, like taking you places. And the idea was, why can't we treat limos like taxis? And it made sense at the time because you could identify them. But here's my point. The reason that business worked among many is they found an early beachhead, meaning an insertion point where they could get into the market that was tiny enough that it was going to go overlooked. If the first thing they said was, hey, we're going to plant ourselves in New York City and try to take over the taxi market, good luck with that, right? Get crushed. And so I think for a lot of startups, it's not about eating the elephant all at once, right? It's how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? So what's that initial place you're going to get into?
I literally heard the general partner of a fund describe yesterday exactly what you said. She said, I invested in this company because they'd figured out a land and expand. That's what made them different. They said, we are going to be a subscription play solving this unique problem, but we know how to eventually make it a data play and innovate more products. And the opportunity was massive, but they focused on short-term execution. That's how they differentiated.
And that's the thing, that's Facebook starting at Harvard. It's one of those things where more often than not, that solves a bunch of problems for you. Problem number one, you're raising $1 million. You're not going to go across the entire world with $1 million, right? So stick to Seattle or wherever you're based, and what you can do in your backyard. Problem number two, if the smallest, most low-hanging fruit isn't going to buy this product, who cares if there's a bigger audience for it? Like if I'm a musician and if like my friends, family in hometown aren't going to come to my shows, chances are I'm not going to be a huge hit, right? So I look at the insertion point, be like, dude, if these guys can't get this right, who cares how much bigger the market is, right? So show me you're going to get that right.
I think that founders, they get confused in terms of they think the tech has to be different, which is true. You've got a secret sauce, you're building tech in a different way, but business model, like
Yeah.
a startup really is a business model that's wrapped around an idea.
Yep.
So then how much differentiation can be in that business model? Talk about that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go to a tiny tangent initially, just because I want to level set, because I think this is interesting. Most founders can get into a business with no differentiation. It's going to sound heretical in the startup world, right? And actually still be okay. Because one of the things everybody forgets is you're assuming the people that currently do what that is are any good at it, or their eye is still on the ball, right?
Sure.
Like, think of how many businesses that have come up, right? Where they basically just did what everybody else was doing. Take like Uber's innovation out of it. At the end of the day, they're still a taxi company. But the taxi companies, as they stood, sucked so badly that all you just need to do is not be less awful and be able to take it. Now, they created a lot more than that. But I just want to say, as a baseline, before we even get into differentiation or anything else like that, remember that when you first have this idea and you Google it and you see 3 other people are doing it, and you're like, oh, I guess I can't do it. Ask yourself, are they doing it as best as you possibly could? Is their eye still on the prize? By the way, there are so many companies out there where on paper, on their website, it looks like they're really good at what they do. But when you talk to the customers or you talk to the people that work there, they are so checked out, they'll look for anything else. So again, I just want to level set that just sometimes just showing up and being better is actually what it takes. But that notwithstanding, the second one is you have to be better at something that the customer cares about the most, okay? And let me explain that. A lot of people are so hung up on saying, let's do something our competition doesn't do, right? So, hey, they don't have this feature. Look at our competitive matrix. We have that feature. Okay. What does the customer want the most? If what they want the most is the one feature you have that they don't, golden, focus on that. But the focal point should be, here's what customers want the most, and they can't get it at all of these other places. That's why this feature makes the most amount of sense. In other words, your competitive slide, for example, as kind of a mock-up of how to think about this, your competitive slide should look like this. One sentence that says, our customers want this the most. We have it. Other guys don't. That's it. That's our competition.
Nice.
At what point you might say, well, what about the other features? What if people want those more? Guess what? Those won't be your customers. They are going to go somewhere else, right? If they don't want McDonald's, but they want Burger King, dude, they're going to go to Burger King, right? But McDonald's worked out okay. You look at it and you say to yourself, we can only do one, sometimes 2 things really well. So what are those things and how do we put all of our effort there? Not how do we compete on every feature with stuff that's already been built? That's useless. That's already been done. Find the new shit.
Okay. The final one investors are thinking is why you?
Yep.
How do founders communicate why me or why us in their pitch decks?
You bet. So there's 3 things that categorically that you can do in order to kind of promote yourself. And it looks something like this. The first thing is categorically you've done something in this space. You have industry knowledge, which this will surprise a lot of people. A lot of founders don't. I didn't. Dude, every business I ever went into, I had no industry knowledge whatsoever. When I started one of the first interactive agencies, I didn't know anything about an agency business. I was a theater major. I literally I didn't even understand what business was. So a lot of people won't have that. But again, of those 3 pillars, what your industry experience is or anything close to it is so important because you're not going in as a total newbie. Maybe you don't have that, but if you do, it's important. The second thing is, what milestones, what achievements have you made as a founder in your life? Even if it has nothing to do with this industry. If I was top salesperson, if I graduated cum laude, if I did something that was unique, here's something you may not realize about investors. Investors can tell when they're betting on winners. Why? Because winners have achieved. Whatever they've done before, they've achieved multiple times, right? In my short career early on, I didn't have much resume. I went to a couple colleges, didn't graduate, right? So didn't have that going for me. I graduated bottom of my class in high school, definitely didn't have that going for me, right? But I was the top salesperson at a computer company that I came out of high school in, right? I was like doing millions of dollars in sales by the time I was like 18, right? That's pretty cool. Guess what? Dudes who do stuff like that probably do stuff like that again. It's why when you look at, say, college football, the people that did really well in college football go to the NFL because they tend to be really good at this game, right? They tend to be winners. And so the second category is, what have you done well? And it kind of goes back to, like, if you remember your college applications where they were like, what are the achievements you've had? Those achievements, even if they're not directly correlative, matter because winners tend to win. And you have to show what you've won at.
Yeah, that's the reason why commentator on the application asks, what's something impressive you've done outside of your startup, or what system have you hacked outside of your startup? Because those principles translate into different domains. And that's a great way to look at those signals and see if the founder is going to be successful.
You bet. The third one, which I actually believe in a little bit less, just because I think I'm a little jaded, is investors love to see social proof. I worked at big company. I came from big company. I worked on big project, right? I say, if you can put a logo next to your name that people have seen before, often they won't even take that any further. You're like, I was at Google. Dude, you were in customer service, right? Like you weren't running North America, right? Well, here's what they see. They see Ed Kang and they see Google. They say, oh, damn, he's a Google guy, right? Do not overlook social proof. So often when I see people's team slides, I'm like, dude, you came from 3 amazing companies. Why are none of those logos on there? You mean make that thing look like a NASCAR, right? Like with everything that you've done. And those logos can be companies you've worked at. They can be brands you've worked for. So a lot of people coming out of services worked for major brands. I ran a company called Blue Diesel, which was one of the largest interactive agencies that you've never heard of. But you know who you have heard of? Our clients, Best Buy, BMW, etc. Right? So if I'm doing my team slide, I'm like, I helped launch Best Buy, I helped launch BMW, I helped launch, etc. And now you associate me with those brands. So that social proof, that brand recognition absolutely matters. It's overlooked all the time.
A lot of founders ask me when I'm helping them here at Startups.com, they say, what's in it for you? Because we give a lot of really great advice at a very affordable and accessible entry point. And I tell them, listen, what's in it for me is you got to be successful. And if you're successful, I'm going to name drop you like it's going out of style. I'm going to be the NASCAR. Like, I'm going to take full credit for your success. That makes me look good. So I'm going to work hard to make you successful. That makes me look good. That's the same thing that you're talking about in terms of that social proof, which is good.
Absolutely.
Okay, final question.